Alright guys, today I'm going to show you the thing that I feel like I had the most trouble with when I was barely starting out growing dragon fruit, right? And that is watering your plants. You know, you go online, you read all these articles on how much and when to water your dragon fruit. And the number one thing you see is, do not overwater. But what does that mean? So basically overwatering is when your roots of your plant are in a lot of water, right? But not just water and dirt. You know, a lot of water and dirt in one place, sorry, encourages fungus and bacteria growth, right? And that bacteria and fungus can infect your roots. And without roots, your plant basically can't uptake water and your whole plant dies, right? So that's what they mean by don't overwater. But how do you overwater, and how do you know when you haven't overwatered, right? So what I like to do is I like to take a probe, right? Let me show you. Let me get my probe over here. Here it is. I like to get a probe like this, right? Moisture meter. I got this one on Amazon for I think like 15 bucks. And as you can see here, there's numbers from 1 being driest and 10 to being the most wet, right? That wet region for dragon fruit is where you don't want to be. That's what encourages bacterial and fungal growth. And this green region is where you do want to be. So what I personally like to do is I like to water until I get to around 7 or 8, right? Like that's fine. It'll go down. And I water once it reaches 3. You know, dragon fruit doesn't like to be completely dry for long periods of time because it's a tropical cactus. It gets a lot of rainstorms. So what I do is I take it about 3 inches, right? About the length of my finger. So kind of about there, right? And then I stick it into the soil right here. Like that. Stick it all the way down, and then I read it. So I just give it about 30 seconds to a minute to finally stabilize. And just for the purpose of this video, you know, my moisture is in between 4 to 5, right? It's starting to go down towards 4. So once it reaches 3, you know, I'll take a reading all around the entire base of the plant, maybe like 4 or 5 readings to make sure it's all at 3. And if it's not all at 3, then I'll wait, you know. But once it reaches 3 for like most of the plant, then I'll water. You know, and if you don't have a probe, what I like to do then or before is I like to take my finger, you know, 3 inches deep, around 2 to 3 knuckles deep, you know, and I'll stick it in there, you know, I'll stick it around 2 to 3 inches deep, like that, right? And then I'll pull my finger out. You see how there's dirt clinging to my finger? That means that the soil is wet, and you know the fluidity, the cohesion, I think it's called, of water, it'll stick to your finger, and that's how you know that there's still moisture in the soil. If your whole soil becomes sandy like this, you know, 2 or 3 inches deep, then that's when you know you need to water, you know. If it clumps together, you know, you don't need to water. So that's another way. But how do you know if you water right? So I'd say that the goal of your watering, right, is to make sure that your plants have enough water in them. So like as you can see here, my plant is nice and plump, you know. It's not thin and it doesn't give. You see, it's plump, it's thick. Same thing for here. It doesn't necessarily have to be plump, but I would say it does have to be rigid, right? I can bend this. I'm bending this with quite a bit of force, and it's barely giving. Especially right here, you know. They don't give. If they give, they don't have water. And I know this because plants, in the plant cells, they have something in their cells called a vacuole, right? It's sort of like a water balloon inside the cell. And the vacuole, it gives the shape to the cell. So if the vacuole is full of water, the cell will expand and be rigid. If the vacuole is, you know, has less water, is empty of water, then the cell will kind of contract and be flimsy, you know. So because it's rigid like this, I know that the vacuoles are full of water inside my plant. If it's flimsy, then I know that it needs water, right? So what I personally like to do is I will take my 2-gallon over here that I got from Home Depot, and I'll fill it up, and I'll water the entire plant, the entire pot, and then I'll fill it up again, and then I'll water again, giving it a total of 4 gallons. And for me, that's enough to keep the plant plump and nice and plump and thick like that until the next time I water, right? And me doing that, you know, it stays at a good moisture level for about 2 weeks or so, you know. But if it takes longer, you know, I'll wait. If it's shorter time, then I'll water. You know, I don't water on a schedule like every 2 weeks. I water when the plant needs the water, when it becomes thin, you know, because once it goes down to 3, then I notice the plant will also get flimsier, you know, and I want it to be thick and rigid. I want to feel the vacuole of the plant, right? So that's how I do it. But for potted plants, you know, like this, you know, I like to wait until I stick it all the way down in there, and I wait until the bottom is 3, you know, needs moisture, because I don't want to keep watering over and over again and have the bottom be wet while the top is dry. You know, I want the whole thing to dry out so I don't encourage any growth. Sorry about that. Garbage truck passing by. But yeah, the reason why I water 4 gallons only is because I kind of messed up my soil blend, and I have soil in there that really holds water, and there's a lot of water at the bottom, and at the top is dry, right? So I only kind of water like halfway, 4 gallons, so that the bottom stays relatively moist and not wet, you know, because it takes longer at the bottom to dry out, whereas the top, you know, I kind of have it like evenly dry out, and that's why I only water 4 gallons, and 4 gallons works for me. You might need more or less. It all depends on how thick and plump your plant is and how much you feel the vacuole. So go ahead and experiment. If you find that you water correctly and you waited, but your plant seems to be kind of thirsty and thin and flimsy, you know, between waterings, then maybe you need to water more. You know, don't water more often, water more each time. That's the key to not overwatering. You know, you can submerge this plant in water and it'll be fine, but if you submerge it for a long time, you know, then you have problems. That's called overwatering. Overwatering is watering your plant too often, not too much. Because remember, this plant lives in places with this tropical storms, almost hurricanes, and it survives because the soil is well draining, because the water gets away quickly. You know, it doesn't sit in water. So hopefully I explained it well enough on how to water your dragon fruit. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. All right, see you guys.